Hello and welcome. Today is Thursday, May 6th, 2021. It is May 6th, the first Thursday of the month. It's the HRC monthly meeting at 5 o'clock Eastern Time, and we're meeting via Zoom. Let's do a roll call of the commissioners who are present. Lynn Alexis is not able to attend tonight. She had another conflict in a training. Reverend Bogertman.
Present.
Thank you. Chief Bright.
Present.
Thank you. Chief Callahan does not look to be present at the moment. Jalon Fowler.
Present.
Thank you. Dr. Garcia. And Dr. Garcia is in attendance. He may not be able to speak because he's in transit from his vehicle to his computer, but he is in attendance. Shema Mansour Hosseini.
Present.
Thank you. Rashid Mukabir.
Present.
Thank you. Karu Pish.
Present.
Thank you. Kathy Ann Reinstein.
Present.
Thank you. And I am the chairperson, Janine Grillo-Mara. Okay. We also have some guests in attendance, and for the guests to know, the public forum will not be happening until toward the end of the meeting, and so you'll just have to wait patiently or come back on. And the guests, so we have guests that are here for the public forum, and then we also will have guests joining us earlier on with one of our topic discussions. So we usually begin our meetings with a few moments of simply arriving and settling as a way to get grounded and be present so that we can interact in the meeting from a more sourced place. So in a way that's comfortable for you, just find a comfortable sit, whether you're in a chair or however. If you want to close your eyes, you're welcome to. If you want to take some slow, deep breaths, that can be an invitation. You might even imagine or sense that you could breathe with your whole body. So just here, this sitting, the way you're contacting your seat, the weight of your body, just here. Just your breath flowing in, flowing out. This moment, each moment, just now. And just this, whatever you feel, perceive, and experience, just letting things be. Just here, just now, just this. You might even see what it's like to open your eyes if they're closed. And then maybe one more slow, deep breath if that's comfortable. And we begin by reflecting on why we're here, what brings us to serve on this commission. And one of our members will read the mission statement. So I will share my screen so that Chief Bright can read it this evening. Just give me a moment. Can you see that, Chief Bright? Chief, you there?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I
Okay,
can see that, yes.
thank you.
The mission of the Revere Human Rights Commission is to promote human rights, human and civil rights, and empower all people of Revere by ensuring that everyone, especially the most vulnerable and marginalized, have equitable opportunities, equal access, and are treated with dignity, respect, fairness, and justice.
Thank you, Chief Bright. I see that there's a attendee that's raising their hand, and where the public forum will not be happening until later in the meeting. So you'll have to just wait patiently. We have a full agenda, and the requests to attend this meeting came in within the last 24 hours. And so you'll just have to wait until it's that time, or you'll have to register for another meeting or contact us in another way. So next we have the approval of the minutes from the April 1st meeting. All the commissioners had a chance to review those. They were sent out earlier this week with the agenda. Do any commissioners have any proposed changes to the April 1st meeting minutes from our monthly meeting? Okay, so none noted. Would someone like to please request a motion to approve? I request someone put up a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll motion to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Raise. Okay, so none opposed, all are in favor. Thank you. And for our pending topic update, this might be the final update that we'll have to share publicly. I wanted to let you know the status of the anti-racism and anti-oppression training for commissioners. Since our last meeting, Ruben Cantor, who's the city staff person who's hosting this meeting and who has been supporting the Human Rights Commission, was able to help us to locate some funding. And so we do have some funding for our training. However, the funding needs to be split between the current fiscal budget, which ends June 30th, and the next fiscal budget, which begins July 1. So that means that we probably won't actually have the training until the fall, considering that timeline in the summer schedule. However, in the upcoming weeks and months, I will contact everyone to create a small planning team that will work on surveys and communications, and then get into the logistics of dates and scheduling. And all of that is not does not require any discussions, any deliberations. And so we can do that internally through email. If anything does need to be deliberated publicly, we will bring it to these meetings, but I don't anticipate that. So I just wanted to give you an update that it's been approved. Thank you, Ruben, for your assistance, and there'll be more information to come. Any questions or comments? Great, none noted. Chief Callahan is on, may the record show Chief Callahan just joined. And Chief, I just, in summary, mentioned that we are moving forward with the training. Ruben helped us secure some funding, and logistics are to follow. It'll probably happen closer to the fall with the budgets in the summertime coming. Okay. And Ruben, are both of our guests here for the next topic, both Bob and Toby?
Yes, they are.
Thank you. So the next topic on the agenda is the 311 request, the Revere History Museum, the narrative of the history of Revere. I'd like to sort of devote about 30 minutes for this if we need it, 40 minutes maximum. We'll see how it goes and how much time we need, but we do have a full agenda. I'll begin with a little bit of a review for context. Then I will introduce our guests, Bob Upton and Toby Pearlstein, and they are from the Revere Society for Cultural and Historical Preservation, and I'll let them introduce themselves and their roles and give a little bit of an overview of the Revere History Museum. The commissioners will have an opportunity to speak or comment if they'd like. And then we'd like to really focus on recommendations, actions, and plans for moving forward and how we can work together and help each other. So I'd like to begin by reading sort of the 311 complaint or request that came in that really instigated this whole topic, which has been on the HRC agenda since February. So just give me a moment so I can read that. So on January 7th, this 311 complaint came in. Hello, I visited Revere's History Museum over a year ago, and as a person of color, I was shocked at all the offensive and racist material in that building that promotes white supremacy and institutional racism. Furthermore, the majority of the workers at the museum were white people. I hope Revere's Human Rights Commission reviews this museum and makes recommendations about the narrative Revere is promoting. Who is running this place? Yet another racist white person. It's 2021. This place is disgusting and a relic that should be condemned. Thank you. So those were some serious accusations. And there was a request that the HRC get involved. The HRC motioned that, each of the commissioners go visit the museum, and as well as to invite the person who issued this complaint to this meeting so that we could have an open, productive dialogue. When I reached out to this person by email, the email immediately bounced back that it was undeliverable, and I tried this 3 times. So it's really unfortunate that we cannot confirm the validity of the person making the complaint. And it's unfortunate that the complaint only included criticism. There were no suggestions or recommendations for how the museum could improve from this person's perspective. The commissioners have all visited the museum. It took a little bit longer because of COVID. The museum was closed, but Bob Upton and Toby Pearlstein were just, really welcoming and accommodating to having us go. And so this took place in the last couple of months. And now they're here to join us so that we can sort of close the loop in this dialogue that was first brought up in February. It's unfortunate that the person who made the complaint cannot be here and be part of the dialogue. However, it's an opportunity for us to hear what this person said, take from it what we can, and move forward and improve. So Ruben, can you please have Bob and Toby join us, unless they would prefer to speak and not be on screen? I see Bob. Okay, I guess they're coming. Hi, Bob. Hi, Toby. First off, thank you both for coming, for being so accommodating to all of the HRC members throughout this process. So I will hand it over to each of you to maybe introduce yourself a little bit more than I did and what your role is with the RSCHP and particularly with the museum, and maybe even give a little bit of an overview of the History Museum and from your perspective. Yep. I think, Bob, if you're going first, I think you're muted.
I am going first. And yes, I was muted. I'm very sorry about that.
No problem.
Nice to see you tonight, Janine, and nice to see everybody on the commission. And it is an opportunity for us once again to get together. I really do appreciate the opportunity here and in the past experiences that we've had. In hearing you to reread the statement and the message that you received or the complaint that you received, I really feel like, that is an opportunity for us and an open invitation to either the complainant or anybody else that would love to come to our museum or would like to come to explore what the museum has, because that's what our goal is, to get and bring people in. And we are certainly open to discussion, criticisms, all of it. I think that's, all part of being a public facing organization as we are. But this evening and at this time, I would like to make some prepared remarks if I could, and I understand the public may not be in attendance at this moment, but I'd like to get these remarks on record about the history of Revere and the history of RSCHP and the Revere History Museum, if I could do that. I would hope that at some point later on in the discussion, we may be able to talk more about some of the things that we're doing as an organization as we do move forward. So if I could, Revere has been a city for more than 100 years, having taken on that designation in 1915. Prior to that, there was the town of Revere, the town of North Chelsea, and Boston, back to the late 17th century, and the original settlement of the area. The original 7 farms that made up Rumney Marsh were granted from Boston to prominent citizens. By 1915, the city of Revere, or Rumney Marsh, the city of Chelsea, or Winnissimmet, and the town of Winthrop, or Pullen Point, had been set off from the original Boston land grants and began to develop as individual entities. Historical collections related to the history have been variously assembled and stored both by the city of Revere and the Revere Public Library. There have been a couple of historical societies over the years that have accumulated some materials, but those activities and materials have been lost to time. The Revere History Museum and the Revere Society for Cultural Historical Preservation started more than 25 years ago. RSCHP took on the task of saving the abandoned Immaculate Conception Rectory on Beach Street from demolition. With the help and support of the city, the building was saved and renovated for the purpose of being a history museum. Also, as a recognition of the historical significance of the rectory, the building was placed on the National Register of Historic Places on February 11th, 2002. As part of the early efforts, large collections of historical materials, including artifacts from both the city and the library, have been transferred to the care of RSCHP. Over time, more items have been donated by the public. RSCHP relies on these donations to augment the existing collections, given that the society does not have funds to purchase items. Many of these materials are currently on display at the museum's 14 exhibit spaces. Others are in storage, awaiting the opportunity for us to display them. The mission of RSCHP is basically to collect, preserve, interpret, and share anything related to the history of Revere and its predecessor entities. This mission acknowledges that the history of our city is made every day, and the city grows and changes, and thus needs to be actively captured. In addition to those prepared remarks, I'd also like to say that we at RSCHP sincerely appreciate that the HRC members came to the museum and literally came, visited, spent time with us, and took a real good look around, had many very interesting questions for us, and we look forward to following up on those questions that they may have, and to help work with the HRC in their efforts as well as ours to talk more about the culture of Revere today, particularly over the last 50 years, and how we can improve upon the presentation of information that would be of interest to people that currently live in Revere or anyone doing research on the community. In light of the discussions that we've had, we have certainly begun to accelerate our outreach to the diverse communities of Revere. We've met with individuals within those communities. We're developing programming, and we hope to build our membership through this interaction and outreach to these communities within Revere. Those are my prepared remarks, and I hope that you really do get from me the sense of sincerity that Dr. Toby Pearlstein and I have about welcoming folks into the museum so we can help to educate, as was part of our original mission as we started this museum. That's what I have.
Thank you, Bob. Toby, Dr. Pearlstein, would you like to speak?
Sure, thank you. Well, as Janine and Bob have mentioned, my name is Toby Pearlstein. My role at the library is, my role at the History Museum. I have a role at the library too, but my role at the History Museum is as the volunteer operations director for the museum, which means that I'm essentially responsible for securing, preserving, helping to interpret, catalog, etc., all of the items we currently have in our collections, as well as trying to set priorities for items that we will take as donations going forward, or items that we will try to aggressively go out and collect within the community going forward. One of the interesting things about the complaint we received is that aside from what I think is the hyperbole of the language in it, it did not raise issues of gaps in our museum collection that we were not already aware of. We knew that we had not done a very good job of collecting material, particularly over the past 50 years, as the demographics of the city have changed. And we've tried in a number of ways to begin programming to help rectify that. One of the things I want to kind of say as at the outset that is an umbrella over all of this is the fact that we are an all volunteer organization. We have no paid staff, which means we have no one that is either part-time for 25 or 30 hours a week or full-time at the museum at all. We rely purely on the activity of volunteers to help us as tour guides, as exhibit prep people, as catalogers, as folks that can go out and identify materials to collect, etc. Currently, there are 2 volunteers, Bob and myself, working to try and make things better at the museum. So we appreciated very much the folks from the HRC coming to the museum to get some context within which all of these remarks are being made and to understand where we're coming from and what are the challenges we face. So how are we trying to move forward and rectify some of these gaps that we find in our collections? The primary way we're doing that is through the creation of a project.
Toby, could I pause you there?
Sure,
Because
sure.
I'd like to, that'll be in our next section.
Okay,
after.
sure.
I'd like to just pause. So
Sure.
if I heard you both correctly, thank you, Bob, for giving a little bit of a history of Revere. And it sounds like that up to this point, it has been just a small volunteer space that is sort of running the museum, or a small base of volunteers that are even donating items. And so that's one limitation. And that you have already, even prior to this 311 request, realized that there were some gaps in maybe representing the full diversity of what has happened in the city in the past decades, especially the last 50 years. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so I would now like to open it to commissioners in, if we already agree that that the museum is run by a very small group of volunteers, and those who have donated are a small group of volunteers. And there's already the acknowledgement that they need more resources and help and want to represent the recent decades of Revere. We don't really need to repeat that. What I'd like to do is hear if you have any other comments, maybe from your from when you were at the tours, or anything in particular before we move into the section on talking about plans or recommendations? Okay. All right, so since I see no hands, then I would, suggest that Bob and Toby, why don't you just give a little, like an overview of what plans you already have in place, and then we can hear from the commissioners as they may have some other recommendations.
Sure, we have two specific plans in place. One is the creation of a multicultural exhibit, and I'll talk in a little bit about what's going to be required to make that a reality. And the second is the creation of what we're terming, for lack of a better term at this point, a storytelling project, where we are attempting to reach out into the community to learn from the community the kinds of things that they've experienced being new residents in Revere, new immigrants to this country, whatever the situation might be, and how we can best represent that. And that may be through something like an oral history interview. It may be through a cooking demonstration. It may be through photographs. It may be through sharing of artifacts and telling stories about the artifacts. There are a variety of ways it can happen. That project team is in place. We've met 3 times already. It's being led by a woman called Lynn Holinen, who was previously the librarian at the high school, is currently an elementary school teacher. I think she's just retired as an elementary school teacher in Marblehead, but is well acquainted with Revere and well acquainted with the Historical Society. And there are a number of members of the group representing various facets of the community. We're hoping that that storytelling program will be able to reach out and help us pull in these kinds of stories, help us pull in information about these communities, because that is one thing that we have been lacking in the past, is either any volunteers or any way really to outreach into these communities other than anecdotally. So for example, 2 or 3 years ago, we ran a program at the Revere School where we did a history of the neighborhoods of Revere, and we brought in people from various communities to speak at that. We also talked with the kids, very multicultural group at the Revere School. We also talked to them about history and the development of neighborhoods and what it means. So there are a lot of things we want to do. We need resources to do them, and those resources come in 2 ways. We need people to help us reach out into the community, and then we need people who will come back after that outreach and talk with us about their stories, volunteer with us in order to help interpret what we eventually collect into the museum, and make sure that all of these stories are documented going forward.
Do any commissioners have any questions or comments about this storytelling program?
Yes, I'd like to make a few remarks. I, along with others, we have visited the museum. The museum reflects its time. And to be honest with all of you, I was extremely impressed with the artifacts and enthusiasm and the history that is in that museum. I'm just speaking for myself. I visited all the areas in the museum. It was a small group of commissioners that visited that day. I did not witness what has been reported by this citizen or member of the Revere community. So I did not. I'm not saying that we should not work on some recommendations to make the museum richer. That's the goal. I think Bob has that goal, and also Toby, along with Toby. We can always improve things. And I actually myself, I have invited Bob and Toby to the superintendent's cabinet meeting, and they went there and they did a nice presentation. We suggested some ideas that will contribute to the development and expansion of the museum in terms of making sure that it's more It's more diverse. It represents the culture of our city, and so on and so forth. So it was a great meeting with us. We got some plans in the summer to help out, and also in the fall. The power of storytelling, there's no doubt in my mind, that's one way in which it's certainly one way that can certainly can support the museum. We can support the museum by bringing immigrant families, immigrant parents coming to the museum, tell their story, they live the experience in this country, in the community, and they may bring artifacts from their own country and come and do some cooking classes, and share the immigrant stories in this country. That's a powerful way to really make a strong connection between the museum and the community. The whole piece about having students coming to the museum, supporting the museum with doing some research, creating and develop that love for art and so on and so forth. Those are all good things that we can do. So everything is a process. When I went there, to be honest with you, based on what was reported, I've never been to that museum. I went there with some level of skepticism, and I left with total different impression of what has been reported. And it's always good when people say things like that. It's always good to go and verify it before making any judgment call or any comments. It's always good to go and verify it. It's a small place that you can clearly see that there's homey. I was impressed with the number of artifacts and things that are there. So everything is it's a work in progress, and it reflects the history and the context of its time. And if we make a criticism, we have to certainly work with the museum, work with Bob and Toby. It's not just about making criticism or criticize, it's about being part of the solution. If you really want to support the museum and support you have to be part of the solution. If you see something, come and work with the museum. They open people. They are very enthusiastic, and they really want to improve that place. And it's by working together and to show the spirit of unity that we can support something like that. So that's all I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia, very much. That was helpful. I also want to include, if this has not been mentioned yet, and it is an important point, at least this came up when Vice Chair Shea and I were present for our tour. Looking at improving the museum and making it more diverse and representative of recent decades does in no way imply that we're trying to erase the white history that is very much a part of Revere. So it's not either or, it's being inclusive and just making sure that we're not leaving parts out. So I just wanted to add that because it hadn't been mentioned yet. Bob, did you want to speak?
Yes, if I could. I certainly appreciate these comments, these very helpful and supportive comments and encouraging comments for the general public to hear them and to feel them as invitations to participate and engage with us. I also would like to add that, Toby had mentioned the working group on the storytelling. There's also a working group on the collection and documentation of and uploading to our records keeping and our the software program that we have for archiving this information. There are other working groups in support of our organization, but we also, we have a board, and Toby and I are certainly on the board. She is the director of museum operations. I happen to be the president, but Ed DeVoe, who's a well-known person in the community, I think for so many people, he's the vice president and treasurer of the organization. Vanessa Biasella recently left our board, but she's done lots in the past couple of years with us. Rick and Mary Jane Terenzi have worked many, many long hours and many years to build this organization and the museum. And, our membership has been very supportive, but we need more people to help us out, to help us to not only tell the story of Revere, but to reflect Revere today, particularly in the last 50 years. So those are my comments, and I would want to encourage engagement and participation with us.
Thank you, Bob. Vice Chair Shea, please go ahead, unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much thank you, Bob and Toby, for coming here and expressing your plans of what you want to do with the historical with the Revere Historical Museum. I think speaking on that note on inclusivity, in terms of the multicultural exhibit, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Toby or Bob, but as in like its own section in the museum is like solely on multicultural, that is a multicultural exhibit, or is it like spread out throughout the entire museum? Because I heard someone from the community talk about this, and I think they bring up a very good point. I'm surprised I didn't think about it in the first time, but I feel like in order to promote more inclusivity, we shouldn't just have one section that's just on multicultural history. You know what I'm saying? Like if we're going to promote inclusivity, it should be found throughout the entire building. For example, like the section that talks about, you know, the amusement park and stuff like that. Maybe talk about like all the upcoming Asian restaurants and businesses that were happening around that time. Or like, I feel like we shouldn't just limit it to just one section, because that just shows that like, yeah, we're being inclusive, but they're still separate. Like the two histories are still separate if we don't put the two histories together. You know what I'm trying to say? Or like the room that has like all the military uniforms, there shouldn't be like one room for, you know, those that weren't white and a room that were for those that are white. There should be like a room that reflects about the military history of our city in terms of all cultures, not just like separate them. I feel like the fact that but like I said, Toby, correct me if I'm wrong, if the multicultural exhibit is like its own separate thing, but if it is, I feel like it would be a much better way of showing inclusivity if we had just all the cultures being shown throughout the entire museum. That's just my 2 cents on it.
No, you raise a good question, and I'm sorry I didn't make it clear. We're definitely setting aside a space for a special multicultural exhibit. So this is an exhibit that would be in a large enough space that we can reflect so many different new diverse communities. That's one aspect of it. However, as you may remember, each of our exhibit areas covers a segment of Revere history, if you will, or a segment about Revere. So for example, the exhibit on religions in Revere, which exists throughout the second floor of the museum, makes no mention of mosques, makes no mention of other than what you might think are the typical either Christian religions or Jewish religions. We've recently, because of the closings of the Jewish temples in Revere, been able to collect quite a number of artifacts from those temples. But we have nothing from mosques. We have nothing from the Mormon church. And those would certainly be included in the religious exhibit of the city, because we want to showcase all of the different religions. So not something separate that's only dealing with the newer religions in the city. Likewise, in the room that covers the industry of the city, if there are industries that have arisen, for example, we've talked about doing with the storytelling committee, talked about doing a timeline where we actually look at the theme of Revere as a city of immigrants, from right back to 1693, when Bob mentioned the original 7 farms that were granted to folks from Boston. None of those people were born here. They all came from somewhere else. So Revere has been an immigrant city from that time right up until the present, with different waves of immigrants coming in and out. Different industries have arisen in order to either serve or support those immigrant communities. So in the same way that in our industry room, we have a large exhibit on the newer farms in Revere, we would also like to have exhibits reflecting newer businesses in Revere that are speaking to the new immigrants. So you could see, for example, a timeline of Broadway or Shirley Avenue, where you pick 6 or 8 addresses and look at how the transition of each of those buildings has happened over time. So on Shirley Ave, for example, which I'm more familiar with than the Broadway businesses, you might have had a kosher butcher when I was growing up, which is now some other type of business serving the needs of the particular community. There's been a variety of turnover in businesses as the population of the neighborhood has changed. So the bottom line being, you're quite right. The multicultural exhibit is a specialty exhibit that will reflect artifacts and photographs and possibly even music and maybe even videos, we're not quite sure, in an exhibit space, but there will be all kinds of other information as we're able to collect it, integrated to the government room, the school room. And Dr. Garcia had mentioned this as he turned toward the schoolroom, which has a lot of the athletic history of Revere schools, that we have nothing probably since about the 1970s on the athletic history, and that can bring that in. We have the industry room, as I mentioned, the ladies' sitting room, which we could update with what is typical of how people act in their homes now. So there's lots of different ways that we can integrate other parts into the exhibits. We're not doing a token exhibit of any kind, which I think is kind of the bottom line of your question. That is not our intention at all.
And so Toby, just to clarify, in addition to this special multicultural exhibit, your intention is to weave through the diversity in all of the exhibits. However, you do need people to donate the artifacts
Well, that's it.
for that to happen.
We need the information.
Yes.
And we need the help in exhibit preparation and in thinking about what is the appropriate way for each culture to exhibit something. We would never want to exhibit something in a way that was not respectful of the culture from which it's coming. So the more not only artifacts and donations of materials and documents and costuming and other kinds of things that people might want to donate, we also need to build exhibit labels and exhibit context so we understand where all of this information fits into how the city operates today.
Okay, thank you. It looks like, oh, Karu, it looks like you do no longer, yes, Karu had her hand up. Go ahead, Karu, you can unmute yourself.
I think my hand got tired. That's why I was off. Bob and Toby, thank you so much for volunteering and maintaining the exhibit and the museum. And I also appreciate the person who brought it up to stem this conversation. I greatly appreciate that. And they are brave. They want to make sure that Revere also, they want to feel they belong to Revere as well. And I also agree with Toby and Shay around how you looking at the timeline, you know, how, and appreciate, Toby, what you said about the immigrants kind of city. So I would love to see like the timeline of when the Chinese immigrants coming in, the Cambodian immigrants, the, you know, others group of immigrants that coming in and throughout that timelines. And others, one other thing that I would also encourage is that, you know, on the board and also recruiting volunteer, I would love to see people of color joining the board and also volunteer so they can be part of the creation of the museum. Greatly appreciate all the work that you have put into it, Bob and Toby. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karu. And my sense, one moment, Rschp, is maybe where the HRC can help is to reach out to the communities of people with color so that they know that the History Museum wants volunteers and wants assistance. Okay, go ahead, Rschp.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Bob Upton and Toby Perlstein for taking these allegations seriously and their collaboration to resolve this complaint. I personally visited the museum along with other commissioners to have some context about the issue or the complaint. As a place that relies on donations and volunteers from the community, these individuals have been doing an outstanding job. And they have to be applauded for the work that they have been doing. I have been in the nonprofit sector, and for a while I understand the struggle and the stress that these nonprofit leaders go through to secure resources and funding. To be honest with you, I didn't find the museum representing the multicultural fabric in the city of Revere. I'm not here to criticize the museum representative, but I'm here to be part of the solution. Bob and I have been friends for a while, and he invited me to the museum multiple times, but it didn't happen until recently. So here I would like to put the blame on myself because I didn't do my part to help Bob and Toby at least with some suggestions. As a proud Moroccan American organizer and president of Moroccan American Connections in Revere, and also founder of the Moroccan Cultural Day at Shirley Ave, I put a request to my board to fund a section for the Moroccan community at the museum, and it's been approved. I spoke to Bob. We will be putting a section for the Moroccan community in there, and they would like to go a step further, and they invited all the leaders that I know in the community, from the Latino community, from the Brazilian community, to do their part as well. And they will be working with Resist Foundation and the High Market Foundation to secure funding for these groups. At least we will give grants of $1,000 for each community that want to move forward and create a section representing their communities. And thank you so much for your time, Bob and Toby. For any questions, please reach out to me. Thank you so much.
So, Rashid, thank you very much. If I heard you correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you've requested that your board fund a section for the Moroccan community, and that was approved, so that there can be some kind of display or input from your community. And you've extended this to other communities, that there are $1,000 grants for any other communities that would like to apply and then be able to be included and represented at the History Museum. Is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chair.
That's wonderful, Rashid. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Janine, if I might just add to that, I thoroughly appreciate Rashid's enthusiasm and his willingness to reach out to other communities. I would just put in one caveat that people shouldn't feel that unless they can make a donation to the museum or fund something that they therefore would not be represented. That's not the idea at all. We welcome, of course, any financial resources that we can possibly get, because they will be put to good use in purchasing exhibit materials, et cetera, and outreach and marketing, things like that. But that is not the basis for accepting someone's involvement or materials that they might like to donate. So I just don't want to create that impression.
Thank you very much for that clarification. It sounds like that the funding might just be a little bit more motivation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, but thank you for clarifying. And as we wrap up this topic, are there any other suggestions, recommendations, plans, ways that the HRC and the Rschp can collaborate going forward? Okay. So no other hands raised or comments seen. I would like to again thank all of the commissioners for taking the time to go visit the museum, and thank you again to Bob and Toby for being so gracious in accommodating us and for appearing to have this conversation and open dialogue today.
Thank you.
Bob, did you have your hand raised?
Yes, I do. Just for 1 minute, I just want to say once again, thank you very much to all of the commissioners and for yourself, Janine, for being so honorable and respectful and appreciative of our volunteer efforts in the community of Revere and helping us to address the mission and goals of our organization. And we really do appreciate the way that this was conducted and the concern that you've taken with this particular question, an issue that was brought up. But thank you again.
Thank you both. And I just want to say once more to those attendees that are guests here today, there is time toward the end of the meeting for a public forum And so you don't need to keep raising your hand. Your time will come at that point, and we'll go over how that will unfold. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I guess you guys can exit, or Ruben will assist you in how you can exit the meeting, or exit, disappear off the screen, or whatever it might be. Okay, so thank you all again.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Toby.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Toby.
The next topic is the possibility of future in-person meetings. And really, I just want to get a poll, just a general sense. There are no specific plans around this at the time, but since we only meet once a month, I thought it was worth it to get a sense from the commission. If people are vaccinated, is anyone opposed to having in-person meetings? So no hands are noted. The logistics would still need to be worked out. When this would happen, would the time still be 5 o'clock? Does that give people that have to travel enough time? Would there be a possibility of a hybrid setting so that you could join online? That is all to be determined. Right now, I just wanted to get a sense of people's comfort level if everyone was vaccinated. So thank you for that. And moving on to the Cultural Holidays and Celebrations Subcommittee. First is the approval of minutes. So you had two sets of minutes for, 2 sets of meeting minutes for that subcommittee. One was on March 30th because we met on April 1st, so the minutes were not ready for that meeting. And then there was another meeting on April 22nd. So both of those meeting minutes were submitted earlier this week with the agenda. Again, does anyone have any proposed changes to those meeting minutes? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion. Motion to approve the minutes from the April 22nd subcommittee meeting.
How about a motion to approve both March 30th and April 22nd? Can we?
And I'll include the March 30 meeting also in that motion.
Someone second?
If I can, I will. I don't know if I can, being the chair of that subcommittee, but I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, so all in favor. Chief Callahan, I don't know if you could maybe, if Chief Callahan, if you are opposed, unmute yourself. If not, then I will assume you are in favor.
I think Chief Callahan's having some difficulties. He'll be back on in a minute.
Okay.
He's having some technical.
Okay, we have a majority, but we'll make sure that he's on board with that. And Kathy, would you like to give a report for the subcommittee, the Cultural Holidays and Celebrations Subcommittee?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to thank the members of the subcommittee. We have been meeting monthly, and it's been great conversation, great ideas, great input. So we had a cultural calendar example that Dr. Garcia provided to us. We actually took some of that and we've added it to the cultural awareness events calendar under our web page on the city's website. And they were approved. And after we approved it, actually it was the chair found some dates that had that were off, and there were some other inaccuracies. So they are in the process. We're checking them, we're reviewing them and correcting any errors. And then once they are corrected, we will send the list to everyone. And I think.
Would you like me to share the screen so that the commissioners can now see what the calendar looks like now that it has all the events?
Thank you.
So this is on the city's website on the home page, the calendar, you have to click on cultural and awareness events, but on the HRC webpage, it just displays those as a default. So I will show that. Okay. Okay, so for instance, this shows you, in May, all the different events, and if you click on certain ones, okay, and you could go through really like any month. This is now June, and it takes you through, and we've done this pretty much through December. So through December, all of these events have been added, and as Kathy, chair of the subcommittee, mentioned, we just want to, at some point, review all the ones from starting in January to make sure the dates are accurate. There are some dates that recur year after year, and we were able to put those in so that they recur if they're the same awareness month or the same dates. And for any commissioner or anyone in the public, if you want to add to this, you just go to add an event, and you can access this on the home page or the HRC webpage. And then you can put what your event is and fill in the details of if it's a single day or spans multiple days, if it's has a specific time, or it might be that it's all day. If it's appropriate to put a location. And the ones that the HRC is addressing is this filter right here, the cultural and awareness events. There may or may not be a description, and then you submit the event, and it needs to get approved, but that is the process for anyone on the commission or anyone in the community to submit an event. And thank you to the subcommittee for, just getting all these events onto the calendar, so that hopefully now that that piece has been done, they can go a little bit further into what they see as their next steps would be and report back. Kathy, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, that was it. Just wanted to say thank you to all of you who have been able to attend the last 2 meetings. It's very much appreciated.
And if you are on that subcommittee, they meet the third Thursday of the month, so 2 weeks from tonight. And it probably won't be a long-term monthly meeting, but there might still be another, 1, 2, or 3 monthly meetings to just, get things a little bit in order at this point. Okay, thank you. Under other business, I just have 2 quick things to note. I wanted to remind the commissioners that when you get an email, when someone contacts us through the HRC webpage, and it goes out to everyone, it is really informational for all of the commissioners, but generally a city staff would, either someone from the mayor's office, or it could be Ruben who's supporting the HRC. A city staff person is generally responding. So you don't need to worry about there being a response. And for instance, the person that had put the recommendation in for the Taiwanese American Heritage Week and having a proclamation, the mayor did approve that request, and that is going to be happening. So I just wanted you to know while we had this meeting, or sometimes I might just send a quick update to let you know. And the other thing is that going forward, hopefully at the next meeting, I want us to think about elaborating on our mission statement and taking some more concrete steps to have our goals and objectives and other kinds of related materials in place. Because really, if we want to create subcommittees, rather than just creating them because they sound like a good idea, it really helps if they're coming out of a bigger vision and plan. Okay. And so at this point, Ruben, are our guests still here?
They are. There are 3 of them.
Okay. And so before we get to this public forum section, I would like to read what the ground rules will be for this part of the meeting. So this is a reminder that this is our HRC monthly meeting. It's not a mediation meeting. The public forum section of the monthly meeting is to share human rights concerns. Registered guests will have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The HRC members will then have a brief opportunity to comment if they choose. Guests are expected to speak in an open and respectful way. Aggressive speech or slander will not be tolerated. Guests will be muted if needed, and after being reminded more than twice, guests may be removed from the meeting. The HRC does not have authority over city employees or officials. This is not a forum to attack an HRC member. If a guest has an issue with one of our HRC members, they are directed to address this with the appointing authority, in this case, Mayor Arrigo. And comments relative to social media. Unless social media becomes a forum for specific racial violence or is used in a means to further marginalize groups of people, the HRC cannot be a forum for individual social media grievances between people, no matter the context. So just a reminder of how we will set the tone for this section of the meeting. And I will have a timer for when the first guest comes on. So I'm not sure which guest would like to come on first, but please state your name for the record.
Hello, my name is Wayne Rose from 19 Thorndike Street, Revere, Mass.
Well, Wayne, welcome.
Thank you. And I thank the board for hearing me here. I'm just wondering, because I tried to raise my hand during the mission statement because I had a question. Would you privilege me with reading that mission statement again?
Just keep in mind, Mr. Rose, that you have a certain amount of time to speak.
Yes.
So,
you
would be welcome.
If you could get into the mission statement, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, so that will be part of your time to speak?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Let me just share it again. You want me to put it on the screen?
I would like it, please.
Okay, just give me a moment, please. Okay. Wait a minute. Okay, can you see it, sir?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, in your missions, I'm just, could you read the mission statement for me, or would you like me to read it?
I'll read it. The mission statement of the Revere Human Rights Commission is to promote human and civil rights and empower all people of Revere by ensuring that everyone, especially the most vulnerable and marginalized, have equitable opportunities, equal access, and are treated with dignity, respect, fairness, and justice.
So I have a question. Does anyone on the committee have any conflicts of interest or responsibilities that would inhibit them from carrying out this message? And could I get a roll call?
Okay, so sir, you are not chairing the meeting, number one.
I think you should disband this because you can't fulfill your obligation.
You have 3 minutes to speak, and
Okay.
it's not.
Let's get into my second part then, instead of just, let me get into the second part. I've been targeted on social media. I know you say that this has nothing to do with social media, and some of your members have actually called me a white supremacist. Is this what we have come to in the city with this committee?
This is your time to speak. The commissioners can comment when you're done. So you have a comment about, white supremacist. And
Well, I was
you can
attacked
comment
on-
that.
I was attacked by one of your board members. You told me not to say that, but Karu Pish actually referred to me as.
Okay, so I just muted you, sir, because you can take this up with the mayor if you're going to attack an HRC member. So I will allow you to unmute, but I've already gone over what the ground rules are. So you can unmute yourself and you have 1 more minute to speak.
I am not trying to attack anyone, but I do not want to be attacked by commission members. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Because you're not going to let me speak much more than that. So I thank you for the time and the opportunity. And the other thing I raised my hand for was to tell Mr. Upton and Toby that I thought they were doing a great job in the museum. Thank you for letting me speak on that matter also.
Okay, thank you. And there's nothing more you're saying now?
No, because no matter what I say, it's useless. You guys are going to mute me, not let me say what people are saying that are on your commission. So it's useless. You have a nice night.
That's not true. If
it's true.
if you're following the procedures for the meeting that have been set out to have an open and respectful dialogue.
You set up the procedures, so we can't have a dialogue. Thank you.
Mr. Rose, if you feel that you need to have a different forum for a kind of discussion, that's a separate topic. For tonight, you had 3 minutes to speak, and the commissioners will have an opportunity to speak. I said at the start, this is not a mediation. Thank you for attending. Ruben, do we have the other guest here? And if the other guest is here, please let me know if I need to review and restate the ground rules.
No, I understand.
Okay, so can you please state your name for the record?
Hi, my name is Gina Castiello, and I'm a lifelong Revere resident, 2nd generation from Sicily. So we are immigrants also. Thank you for letting me in the meeting. It's been very enlightening. I really am interested in talking about this museum. I'd love to make some Italian cookies and share them with my beautiful, diverse, multicultural community that I now live in. I think I'm extremely misunderstood, but we won't get into it because I said things that weren't so politically correct. However, being the Human Rights Commission meeting, I find it a direct hypocritical statement coming from a member, and I will take it up with the mayor respectfully, because there's many city members, city employees that are throwing racial slurs, and it's a direct, total opposite of what this commission and what the city should be. And there needs to be respect in public safety for all human rights, not just a particular demographic. And this city is being torn apart. And all I have to say is all lives matter. And I'm quoted as a racist. I am far from a racist. I have a lot of Black in my blood. I'm Sicilian. And it's really discouraging to see board members being able to slander constituents and not be reprimanded for it. It's not right. It's a two-sided coin, and it needs to be equal rights, not special rights. And what I personally see are lots of special rights, and I'm called a special privileged, and I'm called all kinds of names. And the more people call me names, Janine, the more it inspires me to stand up for my truth. Because we matter too. Just because certain demographic lack in melanin in their skin doesn't mean that we don't matter on all aspects. So I thank you for opening the doors. I want to get more involved with, I'm going to go see Bob and Toby. Thank you. I didn't even know about this museum. How's that? I didn't even know that that museum existed. So I'm interested in getting involved myself personally. And I want to work with this city because this is no longer the suburb of Boston that my parents that both grew up, one in East Boston and one in the West End, which is now Government Center Boston. So true Bostonians settled here in Revere. I have a long history here in Revere on both sides of the Salamone side and the Castiello side. And many of you, excuse me?
No, that's just the bowl of the sound of the bowl. for
Oh,
the
that's
Revere
great. Yeah,
Times.
the Tibetan, yeah, I have one. But, you know, this is a community, you know, my grandfather and my two great uncles helped build St. Lucy's Chapel, which is now St. Mary's of Assumption Church on Washington Ave. So, you know, I have a lot, I love my community and I could see the changes, but people need to live and work and play in harmony here. And the
Okay.
division has to stop.
Thank you, Gina. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you very much. Before I allow,
Yes. Yeah, there's one more.
we have somebody else, Ruben?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's one more individual who wishes to speak.
Okay, just let me know, either Ruben, you or whoever joins, if I need to restate the ground rules, and otherwise I'll wait for the person to join and set the timer. And if you hear the bowl sound, it's just a gentle reminder that your time is up.
How you doing, Nico Christopoulos, 111 Mill Street.
Hello, Mr. Kostopoulos.
How are you, ma'am?
Very good, thank you.
I just want to say I want to thank the commission for allowing me to speak. What I first would like to say is inclusion is what this commission is about, correct? Is bringing everyone together in the city. And first off, this meeting is the censorship of this meeting is very discouraging, because what's happening is if you're telling us we can't speak on certain topics, social media being one of them, social media platforms are where a lot of bullying happens and a lot of racist comments are made. And for us to not be able to talk about that, I think that's a big problem, especially when you have members of the city telling this commission that that is happening out there to other members of this community. And you guys don't want to hear that?
Sir, can I,
I'm
I'm
confused.
gonna, sir, pause for a moment. I'm gonna save your time, but I don't think that you heard what I said. If you listen completely, in terms of social media, it's not that it cannot be discussed, but it's a forum for specific racial violence, or if it's used as a means to further marginalize groups of people. It is not a forum for individual social media grievances between people. So we're not saying that you can't discuss social media, but when it's grievances between people going back and forth and having different opinions, that is not appropriate for this forum. So I just wanted to clarify that before you continue. Go ahead.
Thank you for that clarification. And I don't think this is the forum for people to take out personal vendettas against each other either. I totally agree. But however, if racist comments are being made or someone's being called a racist, I think that has to be brought up here to hopefully, so that would stop. We don't want that message getting out. And that's not fair to the person being called a racist or a supremacist or whatever it may be. And another thing, I know this isn't the place to hear about a certain member, but I would hope there'd be something other than just going to the mayor, because that's more of the dictatorship. He made the appointments. So now the complaint's going to go to the one sole person that appointed an individual. I don't think that makes someone feel safe. Can we even get a meeting with the mayor to talk about these things? That doesn't seem to be feasible.
The mayor has assured me that he will support us in whatever is needed in this matter.
Okay, well, I think it's very alarming when you have someone in a position that's supposed to promote inclusion and try to help wipe out racism out of this community. And they're making statements that undermine that. that undermine the mission of this committee, I think that's alarming. And I think that needs to be looked at.
Mhm.
And I do respect your rules, but I do have to disagree with some of them. I want to thank you for giving me this time to speak, and I hope you would take some of these topics that I brought up under consideration. And again, thank you for the time.
Thank you. Before I give the commissioners an opportunity, to briefly respond, I'd like to make a couple of statements myself briefly. Someone can share their personal feelings and opinions. And as a white person, what I'm learning, and I'm a straight white person, so, I'm in the more dominant culture, right? I'm not in a culture of people that has been oppressed. And I'm learning that when words like systems of oppression, systemic racism, white supremacy, that there's a misunderstanding for white people that we take this as we're burning down churches, we're saying terrible insults, we're being outwardly discriminating, and this topic is so much more complex than that. It's about systems that are in place that have benefited white people, that white people have been the default culture, the standard of which to live up to and to compare to, and everyone else is second to that. It's not our fault. It doesn't make us bad people. We were sort of born into this and we're conditioned into this. And so all I want to say is speaking as a white person, I'm trying to learn more. And when someone says I'm part of white supremacy, I can acknowledge that. It doesn't mean anything it doesn't mean that I am out harming someone or, acting in an outward way. Okay. But unfortunately, white people have a tendency to take it as that they means they're not ethical, they're not hardworking, they're not good people. And that's not what this whole topic is about. And this is sort of for another time, but I just wanted to share those comments from my perspective. And now I'm going to open it for the commissioners to, if anyone wants to add and make any comments.
I would like to go first. Guess my name is Shema Husseini. And I've seen the posts that being mentioned now that the Gus are talking about, and on top of there's an account called Revere Recorded that kind of like tells the public about a lot of the things that are happening in Revere. And I think there's we need some serious re-education that has to happen. I don't know if you guys have gotten, this is members of the commission, of course, gotten that email from I think it was Dimple Rana, and talking about her experience with the situation that's been going on. And it's like her and a lot of other people are scared for their life because of things like this. And like I said, there's some serious re-education has to be going on. Madam Chair, do you mind if I can call out on some of these examples that I found on social media? This is not between two people. This is like stuff that has been recorded on in public. Am I allowed to do that? Oh, you're muted.
I'm not looking for this meeting to get into these kind of details. I am willing to take under advisement how we should proceed with this, but I don't think tonight is the time to get into the details. First of all parties aren't present. So if we were going to have some kind of another forum around this, I would want all parties present. And that's what I meant about this isn't a mediation. So if other commissioners want to sort of sort of overrule me on this, or I'm willing to hear from other commissioners, but my sense is that I'd rather not get into those kind of details at this time.
Okay, then I'll just talk about it like as a general statement. I feel like in terms of re-education, like before someone says anything, there has to be you need to know what you're saying before you actually say it. You know, whether is it like religion, you know what I'm saying? What is it called? I'm a Muslim. I'm a peaceful person. Sharia law is not is not something that attacks people. Asian Americans and I feel like one thing that should be focused on, especially from the people in the white population, is to acknowledge their privilege, which is something that I'm proud of our HRC is doing, is that a lot of the white members in our community are acknowledging their privilege, which is why I'm honored to have them like work with me in the HRC. But I feel like this is something that has to go beyond just the people at HRC. Like, yes, you do have your rights, and you did Gina, you did mention, like, you know, it's not equal rights but special rights. We have to understand that in our day and age, people who look like me, people who look like Karu, people of color are not getting those equal rights. You know what I'm saying? Yes, it says it in our freedoms of speech and like in our freedoms, but is it really being executed fully? No. That's why we're in the situation in the first place, because it's discriminatory. It's like we have these rights, but we really can't go about them because we're a different color, because we're a different race. And I understand it's kind of hard to think about that as someone who's, well, I don't understand because I'm not a white person, but it may be kind of hard to understand. Sounds like you have this privilege, but no, I feel like the first step is to acknowledge that privilege, and that not everyone has it. You know what I'm saying? And that's like, if you paid attention to the mission statement, it says the most vulnerable and most marginalized in the history in Revere as of the 21st century. White people are no longer the ones who are marginalized and vulnerable. It's those who came later, the Cambodians, the other Asian Americans, eventually the Moroccans, the other Africans that came into America. Those are the ones who are now being marginalized and vulnerable. And in the mission statement, it says that we have to focus on those as well, because there is no equity. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people are getting more resources than others. And that's like something that we have to acknowledge. And I feel like that's something that our guests have to also acknowledge. I'm not saying that you have a problem. I'm not saying if you do, but it's like, that's something that like the general public has to realize, especially with the white population, that, you know, this is systemic racism. I have equal rights, but I can't go about them because I'm African American and I'm a woman of color. So I feel like that's just like, there's some serious re-education that we have to be going through. And I feel like the first step as someone who is of color and is a woman and is like an African American, like that's, I feel like the first step that white Americans should take is to acknowledge that privilege. Because when you don't acknowledge that privilege, like all the lines are blurred. It's like, it's like, it's you're saying that we all have equal rights, but I can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, if African American has more of a chance of being stopped by the police than a white American.
Jay, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want this to be fair. The participants didn't have much time to speak. There's other commissioners that may speak. I have a feeling that this may be a separate meeting where we can have a further dialogue on this. So I'd like to just I'd like this to sort of be fair, and what you're saying is really helpful and valuable, but I'd like to just give others an opportunity to speak.
I apologize, but
no, that's okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. Would you like to sort of do you want to like close out your thoughts? Because
I'm just gonna thank you very much for that opportunity, Chairman. I'm just saying, you know, all of us need re-education, some more than others, but when we acknowledge what we have, it's like, it makes the process a lot more easier. Thank you very much for having me allowed to speak.
And thank you, Shay. And that's an important part of what we want to do in the HRC, is so that we can all feel more united within the community and not so divided, and get to the underlying roots. Rschp?
Just before Rashid speaks, I really just wanted to give anyone who is watching this in Spanish on a Revere TV a heads up that we unfortunately are going to have to cut the Spanish feed because there's another meeting Revere TV is going to have to take that feed to. So just a 3-minute heads up that we'll continue the Spanish here with the recording, but I just wanted to give any listeners that 3-minute warning.
Thank you, Ruben. And Rashid, before you go, I just want to acknowledge, I see that the participants, the guests are raising their hands, and I don't want you to feel that you're being ignored, and I'm sorry if you do feel that way. As I said at the beginning, tonight's monthly meeting, this was not set up to be a forum for us to have a back and forth dialogue. We can entertain that going forward, but that wasn't the intention of tonight. So please know that we're open, but for tonight, we wanted to hear from you. The commissioners have an opportunity to speak, and then we'll go from there. Rashid, thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just want to remind the public that the mission of the HRC took us more than 3 months to write that mission. We are all different, and we had like so many concerns, but we came at the end to an agreement about that mission statement that we involved the public. We heard from the residents. That's the time when that mission statement should be discussed. With that being said, we are all different, and we welcome any suggestion because we are not perfect. We are willing to learn from residents, from anybody who's coming with certain concerns like that, as long as with respect, as long as playing by the rules. And I found that calling this panel useless is a rough statement, that it's not encouraging these commissions, that they are volunteering to serve the city. And we encourage residents to work with us to make our city a better place to live. It's just we have to respect the rules. You can't submit a concern in 24 hours and expect to take a half hour from our meeting that's been pre-scheduled a month ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. You know, that was an important point, that we got the requests for these guests and some information, you know, within the past, literally within the past 24 hours, which we could have denied the request because we already had a full agenda. And I actually cut short a little bit the meeting with Bob and Toby because I was trying to make sure we had some time to have this public forum. Would anybody else like to speak of the commissioners?
I just want to, yeah.
Okay, how about Dr. Garcia? And I think, did Kathy, maybe I saw your hand, so Dr. Garcia and then Kathy.
I just want to say that the very fact that we got 3 members of the community to come and talk to us about some of these issues is a positive step in the right direction. I don't see these as a regression, as long as it's done in a respectful way. And because they are listening, they are interested in knowing. You may come and present an idea, but it has to be done in a respectful way, because that's the essence of this committee. We respect people and we treat them with dignity, and we do not expect anything less. So it's true, the mission statement has been written not too long ago. We are still looking for a director for this body. Certainly there's always room to grow for all of us. And the topic of white supremacy, white privilege, and things like that, those are all, we have to live with those things because those are part of our history. Unfortunately or fortunately, that's where it is. And obviously, I think it was Chaima that spoke about it. There's a lot of education that needs to take place in our community. So this is a hot topic in our country now. And, we're not perfect. This is a group of people that are doing their best to really work to ensure that the city becomes a little bit more inclusive and diverse. And, the residents of Revere have to bear with us and come and work with us to continue to make our city better. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Dr. Garcia. Kathy, you can unmute yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank everybody for their comments today, and that's the various commissioners, the people who submitted emails to us, and the people that came before us today. To kind of echo what Dr. Garcia said, I think it's really important to have public input. I think Rschp said, we asked for public input when we were writing the mission statement. We also did a listening series that we didn't have a lot of public input. And, maybe if we do that again, and as people get more involved and want to learn more, this is, we'd love to have the public participation, but to echo what everyone says, in a respectful way. There's a lot I don't know either. And, coming from, I'm a lifelong resident of Revere as well. I grew up in a very nice house in a very, very nice street in a white family. And I think it's incumbent upon myself, and I just encourage other people to learn. And I think that was some of what Shay was saying. And I'm just going to throw out 2 book suggestions. One is Cast, that I'm finishing now. And another one is called So You Want to Talk About Race. And, I think it never hurts to read, and it never hurts to ask in a respectful way. And I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kathy. On that note, I have not mentioned this, but I have a vision of having a separate webpage with resources, which would include books, articles, podcasts, videos, businesses to support, all kinds of things that can help us to educate. Please bear with us. We were recently reactivated just late last fall, and we just got our mission statement together. We're forming subcommittees. We're elaborating on the mission statement. We're open to input if we need to have periodic open dialogues, difficult discussion dialogues. So as other commissioners have mentioned, we're open and we're here. We want to work with everyone in the community. Do any other commissioners want to speak? Okay. So seeing no other hands or anything else, I would say with this topic, it sounds like this is just the beginning. Sometimes uncomfortable conversations, whether it's the 311 complaint about the museum or this conversation, this is what helps us to sort of wake up a bit and to come together, to learn, to re-educate, and more will come. Please reach out through the HRC webpage, or if you feel like, those of you that feel like you do need to follow up in other ways, please do so, and we'll see what comes further from this talk, from these sort of topics that were brought to our attention, and we will respond in the best way that seems appropriate. That being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair. Motion to adjourn, please.
Thank you. Second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Rschp. And I bet all are in favor. Thank you all so much. Thank you for those of you that came, Bob and Toby that left, Mr. Rose, Ms. Castiello, and I want to make sure, I don't know if I still see his name, Nico, I think was the first name. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce the last name. Castellopoulos. Thank you all. And there's more, like I said, more to follow. Thank you all. Meeting is adjourned, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you, everyone.